Hare Krishna, everybody, and welcome once again to the Soul Ashraya podcast, a weekly bhakti podcast. We will seek the shelter and wisdom of our dear Lord Krishna with Shastra, prayer, and conversation. I am your host, Bhakta Jake, and we are joined with my friend and teacher, Balaram Shakti Das, out in the beautiful land of Tucson, Arizona. And we have some other guests with us as well. We were just actually very quickly discussing our love of Prabhupada and our appreciation for Prabhupada. And on this show, we are going to, I have a feeling this is going to be a good show. Because we are joined once again by our dear friend Kirtan Eshvar. Did I pronounce that the right way?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it.
Okay.
Eshvar
I
Das.
am. Oh my goodness. So Balaram, do you want to get right into the prayers and get right into the dive right in here without any further
Yeah,
ado?
let's do that.
Okay.
You have those queued up?
I do actually. Let me bring it right up and share them on my screen. Here we go. Momentarily. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai, oh Jai. Thank you, Lord Krishna. Okay, I am going to bring up the text right now. Hold on. Oh, it disappeared, but I can bring it back on here.
So we want to, the last paragraph that we read
yes.
in the previous episode, go back over because this is very significant. And Srila Prabhupada puts a lot into the Bhagavad-gita, into his purports in the Bhagavad-gita on this point. And this is kind of a central, very, very central point of the philosophy. So, yeah. This paragraph, our dear Lord, the demigods prayed, it is very difficult to understand your eternal form or personality. So understanding the eternal form of Krishna with two hands. So this section of the Krishna book of Srimad Bhagavatam is referenced in the purport to the verse that is echoed here by the demigods. So the demigods are offering prayers to Kṛṣṇa in the womb. And this point is significant just right off the bat. That why would so the point is Kṛṣṇa being, or the supreme absolute truth being impersonal versus personal. So the verse in the Bhagavad-gita is 11:52. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear." So I'll just say a few things and then invite you guys to speak. So this is taking place in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, the universal form, where Arjuna has asked Kṛṣṇa to see his various forms, the forms of the Godhead, beginning with the universal form, how he appears as this universe, in this universe, controlling, creating, maintaining, destroying this universe. And it's very fearful experience that he has, right? He sees the entire totality situated in one place, and he sees imminent death and destruction. So he's very perturbed, and so he asked Kṛṣṇa to see his four-armed form, and at last his two-armed human-like form. And it's said that when Arjuna thus saw Kṛṣṇa in his original form, he said, "O Janardana, seeing this human-like form so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind, and I am restored to my original nature." So there's a lot there. And so the point that's being brought up, and this is echoing chapter 9, verse 11, where Kṛṣṇa says that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. And that's a very long purport. The commentary there is extensive, that gets into the different theories around Kṛṣṇa and the very misleading and foolish. Kṛṣṇa is saying foolish. Prabhupada is saying foolish because Kṛṣṇa is saying his people are foolish. To think that the supreme Godhead is originally impersonal and then becomes personal, which Kṛṣṇa directly says elsewhere in the Gita that that's not true. That the impersonal Brahman comes from the personal form. And that when they comment on Bhagavad-gita, most of the commentaries on Bhagavad-gita leave out the person of Kṛṣṇa, the personhood of Kṛṣṇa. So Prabhupada says in this commentary of 1152, for some who make a study of Kṛṣṇa by reading Bhagavad-gita or similar Vedic scriptures, Kṛṣṇa is a problem, right? This person, the personhood of Kṛṣṇa, is a problem for them. And so they kind of walk around it, or they don't address it directly because they don't want to have to surrender to a person. So Prabhupada talks about these two processes or calculations that people can make, either material, that maybe Kṛṣṇa was just a material person. He was a very great person, but he's material like us. And then another is speculative, that they put more importance on the universal form of Kṛṣṇa or the impersonal Brahman within Kṛṣṇa, and they say that's what's speaking and that's what you have to surrender to, which isn't really saying anything. And so this section of the Gita is directly for addressing this point. Kṛṣṇa wants it to be known that no, I'm not impersonal, I'm actually a person. I was watching a video last night of this Christian theologian who was making this point that God is a person. He's not a theory. He's not a theory that you either believe in him or not. He's a person. That means you can get to know who he is and have a personal relationship with him. And a point that I don't think he really made, is, basically like on reading the scripture, I just kind of lost that train of thought. Developing, like, how to develop a relationship with him. Anyway, what to speak of what he actually looks like. So, this section of the Bhagavad-gita, and this is connected, is very intimately connected with this part of Krishna's story of the demigods appearing. And so this point is made that if the supreme absolute truth is impersonal, if the actual conception, the actual connection with God that we're looking for is impersonal, there's no reason to be attracted to this avatar, Krishna avatar. But right here, the demigods, as Krishna is saying, even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form. And so in the commentary, he references this, how the demigods came here. So why, when he was in the womb of his mother Devaki, all of the demigods came to see the marvel of Krishna, and they offered nice prayers to the Lord, even though he was not at that time visible to them. They waited to see him. Yeah, so Krishna in his two-armed form is actually desired to be seen by the demigods, like Brahma and Shiva. Okay. Kirtaneshwar, why don't you take it away? What are your thoughts on this?
Well,
You can
it's
maybe
very
take
important.
some speech.
Say that, Prabhu.
I was saying
Can
you can take the screen
me?
share down. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, gotcha.
It's very important to understand this point, because this is really the key to our philosophy, the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, as well as the key to understanding the Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and actually entering into the deepest level of spiritual realization. So we know that Krishna speaks about 3 topics in the Bhagavad-gita. He speaks about karma yoga, he speaks about bhakti yoga, and he speaks about jnana yoga. He speaks about different topics, but 3 general yogas he speaks about. And then when he gets to the section of bhakti yoga, he exclaims Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam, that this is the most confidential and powerful of all knowledge. And if we actually analyze the Bhagavad-gita as it is, and as it's supposed to be understood by the disciplic succession, you'll find something very interesting, that so much of our philosophy, so much of our understanding, so much of what Krishna is actually saying is to understand him. Krishna is making that point so many times in the Bhagavad-gita. First off, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yoviti Tatvata Tvaktva Deham Punar Janma Naiti Mameti Sorjuna. One who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and my activities does not, upon leaving his body, take his birth again in this material world, but goes back to my abode. And then Krishna, in one of the keynote verses of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter Sloki, says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Mata Sarvabhavartate. So he's expressing his own position that I'm the source of everything, everything's emanating from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service. So the qualification for actually engaging in devotional service and performing bhakti yoga is understanding Krishna's position. And Krishna makes this so very, very clear throughout the Bhagavad Gita about his position. So the 9th chapter, you analyze that he's expressing that this is the most confidential part of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the most important knowledge. What is it he is saying? He's specifically pointing out his form. I mean, you quoted the verse, that he is, the fools deride him when he descends into the human form. So that verse is actually in a series of special verses. If you really analyze what's going on in the Bhagavad-gita, at that part, Krishna starts off by saying, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam, that out of all this material nature, all moving and non-moving beings, I'm the controller. This material energy, this material nature is one of my energies, and it's working under my direction. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Hedjunanaya kunteya jagat vipavivartate. So that this whole universe is working under me. So Krishna is expressing that. He's expressing that this whole universe is working under me. And then he says that the fools, and that right verse right after that, the verse you quoted, that the fools, they deride him. Manusim tanumashritaha. They divide him when he comes in his manusim, his human life form. Malamuda, they're mudas. Manusim tanumashritaha. Why? He says, because they don't know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So then Krishna explains this very special verse. He says, but the great souls, Mahatmanastimam Partha, diving prakriti mashritaha, that the great souls who are under the diving prakriti, those great souls who are under the divine nature, and this is kind of a really key part of our Bhagavad-gita, and this is the key part of our philosophy, is that impersonalists and the speculators, they cannot understand this diving prakriti, that there's a divine nature, there's a spiritual nature, there's a internal potency, and that is the personal nature, the personal will of God. Krishna is expressing, he's actually giving his heart out to you, and he's actually indicating Srimati Radharani in this verse, that we know Radharani is the presiding deity of devotional service. So everything to do with bhakti is seen and controlled and under the direction of Srimati Radharani. And even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimati Radharani is kept very confidential. So what to speak of the Bhagavad-gita? But Krishna is indicating her by this verse, Daivim Prakriti Mashrita, that those great souls are under the protection of my divine energy, or my Daivim Prakriti, which is the Hladini Shakti, the pleasure potency of God. So if you deride me, then you don't understand. You cannot enter this. But the great souls, on the other hand, those great souls, the Mahatmas, they're under the divine nature. Why? Because they know my transcendental nature as the Lord of all that is, original and inexhaustible. So there, once again, Krishna is establishing his position, and he's establishing that those who know his position worship him, and they're sheltered under a divine prakriti. So the impersonalists, this is just an example of their misunderstanding, is an impersonalist will sometimes say, oh, it's the will of God. It's the will of God. So something bad happens to them, and they get COVID, all this stuff. But it's God's will. You think it is God's will that you suffer? In other words, you're becoming nihilist. And it's ultimately the platform of nihilism, because there's so much suffering in the world. Everybody can see it. Everybody can see the suffering. Everybody can see the war and the plague and the famine. And that's God's will, so that's okay. And because we're like our nihilistic God, we're also nihilistic to that. But that isn't Krishna's will. Because Krishna is a person, and Krishna is making a distinction in the Bhagavad-gita between this material energy, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam, which is working under him, and his internal energy, which is personal energy, Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakriti mashritaha. So when one is entering into that divine nature, that's now Krishna's personal will. Krishna doesn't want the jiva to suffer. Krishna doesn't want the jiva to be in this world. Krishna wants the jiva to be home with him, to have a relationship with, to love. Krishna loves us, but out of our free will, we're taking shelter of the material energy. So then Krishna gives us, right after that, Krishna gives us the process of how to attain that, right? Famous verse, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, you always chant his glories, endeavor with great determination to serve him, bow down before him, and in that way you'll always be united with him in yoga. So Krishna, so you'll see how this ninth chapter, when you understand Krishna as a person, it's directly indicating our process. It's directly indicating our process and indicating this personal nature of God, which is very confidential. There's different levels of enlightenment, right? It's described as Brahman, there's Paramatma, and there's Bhagavan. But this Bhagavan realization specifically indicates Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam, that he's the original personality of Godhead. And that understanding that confidential aspect is the most powerful part of realizing God. For instance, there's a very famous verse in the Bhagavad-gita, and I'll read that and then I'll leave it to whatever you guys have to say, that kind of demonstrates this. We're just getting out of Purushottam month, and one of my favorite chains of verses in the Bhagavad-gita, pretty sure I have it all memorized in English, but I'll just look at it and make sure. Kṛṣṇa says, there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered into the three worlds and is maintaining them. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, celebrated both in the world and the Vedas as that Supreme Person, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything, and therefore he engages in full devotional service unto me. O son of Bharata, this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So once again, there's another aspect of Bhagavad-gita. Krishna is indicating himself. Whoever knows him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whoever understands this beautiful two-armed form of Kṛṣṇa, he's the knower of everything. He's the highest knower. So this is very special to understand this Kṛṣṇa form, this two-handed form. This is why Arjuna he's in love with the two-handed form. And then Kṛṣṇa famously at the end of the 9th chapter, where he describes all of his personal glories as the most confidential knowledge, he says, once again, Manmanapavamad Bhakto Mad Yajimam Namaskru. Always think of me and become my devotee. So this process of thinking of Kṛṣṇa, of chanting Kṛṣṇa's names, endeavoring with determination to serve Kṛṣṇa, bowing down before Kṛṣṇa, this takes one into that internal potency. It allows one to enter into Kṛṣṇa's pastimes, return to Kṛṣṇa's planet. And there's so many different instances in the Bhagavad-gita that you can find where it's indicating this understanding of Kṛṣṇa as the Supreme Person. So it's very, very difficult for a mundane person to understand that there's God, there's all, and you don't understand God is great, but how great is God? So then they can see God has so many infinite forms. There's, the Purusha avatars, there's all the different forms from Narayan, there's all the different, avatars, Das avatars, and there's so many. And then there's Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa, who appears as Kṛṣṇa and appears as Lord Chaitanya. But he's Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. He's the original personality of Godhead. And it's from him that all other candles are lit. And if you understand that particular thing, then you're the knower of everything. In fact, there's another verse in the Bhagavad-gita where Kṛṣṇa, I think it's the 8th chapter, he says, only those who know me are completely freed from sin. So it's very, very special, confidential, secret of all secrets to understand this two-handed form of Kṛṣṇa. It's not very easily done. Kṛṣṇa, here's another instance in the Bhagavad-gita. Kṛṣṇa says, out of thousands among men, hardly any even care for spirituality. Out of thousands of those who do, hardly ever attain any type of accomplishment in spirituality. And out of those who become liberated, hardly any of those understand me in full. Because it's very difficult to understand this form of Kṛṣṇa. But we're in a special time right now. Kṛṣṇa's sailing, he's on sale because we're in the time of Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya is giving this special, very confidential information to everybody. Namo Mahavandanyaya Kṛṣṇa Prem Pradayate Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Namne Gauratu Vashe Namaha. He's giving this love of Godhead, this Vraj Leela, this intimate love, Vraj Bhakti, to everybody. That's not accessible in any other time. But Lord Chaitanya is giving it. So therefore, by the chanting process, by the Sankirtan movement, by the mercy of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who are, the great Gaudiya Acharyas, who are liberated people from the spiritual world, who are associates of Srimati Radharani, associates with Bhakti herself, they appear in this world to teach us this confidential information. So when you really look at the vast spectrum of Vedic literatures and you really analyze what it is we're doing, you realize that there is absolutely nothing higher in the process of chanting Hare Krishna and worshiping Shri Radha and Krishna. And that by that devotional, by that bhakti, one can understand everything without a doubt. You realize, what did I get myself into? It's really amazing. So Krishna is the supreme absolute person. And it takes a lot of mercy to be able to have a glimpse into that, to why. So, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Wow. I can't even, I'm speechless. So go ahead. Talk some if you want. I'm just like sucking everything up like a sponge. I'll be honest. Like, this is why devotee association is so important, because I've been on this long-term job working many, many hours a week, and I've been just like so far away from like any kind of like serious devotee, like enhanced like reading. Of course I do get some mercy from Krishna. I quite a bit of mercy actually. So, but like serious studies and like just the constant, you know, association is so important. I knew when you came on today it was going to be a good show. So thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, by all means. Open.
Balaram texted me at a good time today. So, and I'm gonna miss our evening program, so I needed to get some association of what he's before.
Nice.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, this is the special, how do you say, feature, benefit, living in the temple, and the importance of having a temple to go to and to associate with, because you get to associate with those who are in constant association with Krishna. And I love this point so much, that really everything, like our entire movement, our entire philosophy is based on association with Krishna. Like, just try to understand this person. And if you can understand the Supreme Person, right, at the time of death, Tyakto Deham Punarjanma, Naiti Mamiti Short, you never take birth again. You enter into Krishna's world. And what that means is you attain this highest realization of God. Krishna personally, again, like these verses, so on point. Krishna personally takes you out of this world. Like, you are not left in this kind of struggle of duality. Like I was listening to this lecture, or not a lecture, it was like I guess it was kind of a lecture, but it was part of some panel discussion or debate on the existence of God, right? And so you have the Christian philosophy, which I was listening to, and I was like really appreciating his points. Especially the point of God being a person. I was like, wow, like that's incredible realization that he has. You don't always hear that, or maybe you do, but an actual understanding, like a realization that God is someone that you develop a relationship with. But if it is just you trying to connect with God in your heart through the scripture, like this direct link of you and God, there's something there. I'm seeing a connection, a correlation between that and this overarching theme. Like I was kind of browsing YouTube for these kind of videos, and so I was running different things. But this other video of what is the battle between good and evil, basically, I'll just say it like that, right? You have force of good and you have force of evil, and they are two, like they're on equal standing sort of thing. And it's real, you know, it's very much real. That is the reality, is, you know, there is a force of evil, and that force becomes manifest in various entities. You can call him the devil, you can call them demons, right, or entities, or just leave it at energy, you know, or whatever. You know, there is something that we're struggling against, and there's a struggle. And if it's just you and God, then it's a struggle between you and yourself, right? Whereas let's say that's the Paramatma realization level. You have the Brahman, where you don't have any understanding of this ally, you know, this localized ally in your heart, right? We call this the localized feature of God, is the Paramatma. The Brahman level of God realization is you've realized that you are a spiritual being, but that's as far as you're able to go. You don't have any understanding of what's beyond the material world, what is the spiritual reality. So the first realization of spiritual reality beyond just your eternality is the all-cognizant personality of Godhead within your heart, or let's just say the all-cognizant Supreme Soul. There's not so much personality yet. His personality bleeds through. You know, my first experience with God was a revelation of the Paramatma, you know, and he was directly speaking with me, you know, and that cognizance feature was there. But the blissful feature of personality, which is Bhagavan, which we'll touch on, is not yet there, but aspects or qualities of his personality are there, like his sense of humor, you know, can be recognized, which is a very wonderful thing. And you know, you read the Bible, you're getting in touch with the Supreme Lord, and you see, like, yeah, he's kind of got a sense of humor. He has this, there's some kind of personality, and so you study that kind of study of God. It gets into God as a person. It's a realization of a person. In our, like, I believe it was from our study in Mayapur that we learned that these various levels of religion, of conceptions of God, of theology versus atheism. You have, you know, atheism, and the more that you advance your consciousness, the more higher, more refined levels of theology, of theism, that this Paramatma level, it's barely theistic. It's barely even theistic. It's like you recognize God, and you recognize that he's a person, but it's like pseudo personalism. You have impersonalism, is, you know, atheism, and then Paramatma level, it's theistic, but it's not really and it's personal, but it's not really personal. It's like, I know, it's like if I were to know that, you know, Kṛṣṇa lives in the temple, and like I kind of, you know, offer my prayers to him, which I do, but I don't ever have any like personal interaction with him. Can I say that it's like I'm being personal with him? No. Right. So it's like, I know he's there, and sometimes I hear him speak, you know, from, you know, behind the lectern and whatever, but I don't ever like have a personal. So what is the result of this? It's like, if it's just you connecting with God, like, you know, he's a person. Okay, I know he has personal features, but I'm still left with like this battle of consciousness of myself fighting myself. Whereas what what I'm hearing from what Kṛṣṇa was sharing, and this is a point that it just blows me away. Like when our guru, His Grace Jivananda Prabhu, he'll speak on these levels of deep realization of Krishna consciousness. They just totally blow us away. It's like, how are you? Like, you actually realize that? Like, just knowing Krishna as a person, it pulls you beyond all of this struggle. This is actually what it is. There is no more struggle. It's like, what is the difficulty? Prabhupada would say, just get to know Krishna, just connect with Krishna, worship Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, and your life will be sublime. You'll go back to Godhead. I'm not sure if that point is so clear, but this is the Bhagavan feature. It's like, as I believe Kirtan was saying, like, once you connect on the Bhagavan feature, like, you're in his world. Like, he says, you're in my world now. You're no longer of this world. And that's the difference between the Paramatma realization of God as just Lord, and God in his personhood as Kṛṣṇa, like actually knowing his name. This Paramatma, this general, I'm using generalities here, not all, Christians can be categorized like this, but by and large, most Judeo-Christian religions consider the name of God as just that, like his name is the name, which is true. Like, that is the name, like the capital N name, because there are no names other than the names of God. Like, what the name Jake and the person Jake, like, don't have their own existence. Whatever names we inherit, they come from God. It's a very kind of subtle point, but it's something that is not always understood. Like, what is it, like the name? Like, no, the name, like he is all that is name and named. And the named is not different from the name. But if it's just okay, he is the name, he is that which is names, everything that is indicated, he's the supreme object of reality. Okay, fine, I can recognize that there's a God, and then there's me, and then there's my situation and my very real down-to-earth problems that I'm having, that just knowing that there's a name, there's a creator, doesn't really have so much import on my day-to-day, other than I know I need to connect, and if I try to connect, then I'll feel him coming into my life. So the difference is, it's a matter of God coming into your life versus you entering God's life. You enter Krishna's world, and that occurs when you have understanding, contemplation, connection with the personal names, forms, qualities, and activities of the Godhead, which is Kṛṣṇa. That's what Kṛṣṇa means. He's like, I am all that. I am all that, as opposed to just I am. It's like, well, what are you? Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, reciting the Maha Mantra, taking prasad, all these things you mentioned is absolutely...
They're personal forms. They're personal names and forms. It's not just Lord, Father,
right,
the All, the name, the Redeemer. The Redeemer is getting a little more personal, because that's involving how he interfaces with his devotees. Kṛṣṇa, Govinda, Madhava, Damodar. These are names that indicate directly the qualities of sweetness exhibited in his world, in his interactions, in his hometown, in his worlds.
yeah.
So connecting with that is our philosophy. That is what we're doing. We're connecting directly with God as he is in his world, as Kṛṣṇa, and his beautiful names and forms, qualities, and activities. And that will directly pull you onto the transcendental platform. it directly transcends.
I like to say it like this. Most people want to know, most people love God for what he is. They don't love him for who he is. Now, we understand what God is. God is a lot when you look at the what. And there's, understanding the greatness of that what is like, if you understand what God is, you can understand some of Brahman realization and Paramatma realization. But understanding who he is immediately kind of transcends all of those things, because that's what Bhagavad-gita is really pushing is, that once you understand that I am the person behind all that, then you go beyond all that. You actually, because what do we have to reference if we're actually thinking about, we can only really reference his external energy. We can only reference external energy. Like even just understanding we're not this body, we say that's a type of liberation, but that's still considered sattvic knowledge. It's considered knowledge in the mode of goodness. It's not considered transcendental knowledge. So you can understand everything in reference to what he is in the material energy. But still, even if you understand that I'm not this material energy, it's still essentially you're focusing on the material energy. There's no transcendental aspect. The transcendental aspect comes when you devote yourself to Kṛṣṇa as a person. And even then, there's different levels of, and I was trying to make that point that it's not just Vishnu. This Kṛṣṇa person is even deeper than that, is understanding this two-handed form of God is the deepest reality, because he has 64 of 64 qualities in full, whereas even Mahavishnu, we only have 60 of the 64 qualities. And that the secret aspect is that special love. So we like to say that Kṛṣṇa is the absolute truth, but actually, if you expand that more, what is Kṛṣṇa? Kṛṣṇa is not just the boy playing the flute in Golok Vrindavan. Kṛṣṇa is Kṛṣṇa and Kṛṣṇa's devotees and Kṛṣṇa's abode. When you say Kṛṣṇa is the absolute truth, we have to ask, what are we actually referring to when we say Kṛṣṇa? We're not just saying Kṛṣṇa, the boy playing the flute in Vrindavan. We're saying Kṛṣṇa and Kṛṣṇa's devotees and Kṛṣṇa's paraphernalia and Kṛṣṇa's name and Kṛṣṇa's abode. And more importantly, the relationship Kṛṣṇa has with Srimati Radharani and his devotees. So we say the absolute truth is Radha Kṛṣṇa. And Radha Kṛṣṇa is a relationship. So when you say Tadvidi pranipatena paripagyaminas. What is that tattvadarshina? What is that darshan of the truth? That it's not just seeing Kṛṣṇa. When you see the spiritual master, when you see a pure devotee, you're seeing the absolute truth, because you're seeing the relationship of Kṛṣṇa and his devotee. That's what the Bhagavatam is. It's the relationship between the devotees and God, and that love that they exchange, and that love that maintains and supports everything. That is the absolute truth. It's that relationship. So if someone can understand Paramatma, that's Shantaras. But Shantaras is, Lord Chaitanya, he very much kind of he kind of puts it down in a sense in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's really not, because there's no service yet. There's no service yet. And even in that stage, if you think about it, it's not a permanent realization. Even Paramatma realization is not a permanent realization in a sense. You have to come to the full realization at some point in your spiritual progression, because each one has a tendency to pull us down. That if you realize the Paramatma and you're just seeing God in reverence, what happens is most of the time people who realize the Paramatma, the yogic realization, without understanding an aspect of bhakti, without becoming devotees, whether they're pure devotees or mixed devotees, they have to become devotees, because the tendency is to get confused between myself and the Paramatma. That's what happens if someone is a yogi without understanding the devotional aspect. They think I am the Paramatma. They think I am that supreme self. And therefore they become corrupted. But when you understand, when you have devotion to that Paramatma as something greater than yourself, that's within everybody, And there's some sense of service. You can do yoga mishra bhakti. When one can do yoga mishra bhakti, then one can actually realize that Paramatma properly. Same with the Gyan. One still has to have that, Jnana mishra bhakti or Karma mishra bhakti. But you can't have these processes independent of understanding the devotional aspect. The object of our love is the Bhagavan. So, yeah, it's like someone can look at the Paramatma and think very scientifically and very philosophically, but they'll never have any realization of what's the point? If you have the Paramatma in your heart, you don't have any devotion to it. What is there really? What does that mean? That's essentially mystic cities. You can become empowered to do all kinds of things for your own material benefit, but there's no reason to not seek a higher pleasure. I mean, if you're seeing the Lord in your heart with beautiful awe and reverence, and you're adoring Him, then that's devotion to a small degree. But there has to be that bhakti there, and when that devotional aspect is awakened, there's some knowledge of the Bhagavan. There's some knowledge of that there's a supreme controller that's external, that's beyond yourself. But generally, if people are just trying to realize the Paramatma without the devotion, then what happens is they always fall down.
Such a good point that you made about the Shantaras not having service yet at this point. Devotion, we mean devotional service. This is like having the awe and reverence for God, that can take you to the spiritual world. But that's, like you said, Lord Chaitanya puts it down in a sense because it's very kind of flimsy or weak to say connection with God. Why? Because you're saying service has to be there. That really, the Bhagavan feature, the absolute supreme personality of Godhead, is only realized in or by devotional service. That there is Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhakti. That these three things are always concomitant. And so wherever Bhagavan is, he can only be found through the medium of Bhakti. And wherever Bhakti is, there Bhagavan will be found. So if there is devotional service, realization of the Lord is guaranteed. But if you say there's devotion, but there's no service, there is no realization, really. And what the results, the negative result of that, if there's no active service, when we say service, we mean active, we mean activity. There's an active cultivation, that there must be material activity. If you don't have spiritual activity, then necessarily you'll be forced to act materially. And then you get this problem that most of the religious world is experiencing, of being in the world and struggling not to be of the world, because you're not being engaged in devotional service activity. You have devotional sentiment, you believe in God, you might even talk with God, but unless you have a holistic lifestyle of devotional service, what will be your activities? What are you going to engage yourself in? You'll be forced to act. So the devotional service has to be there. And that brings us again back to the point of association. The Shanta Ras, the difference there. So there's 5 rasas, right? It starts with Shanta, which means passive, right? You're not actively engaged, you're just passively in a devotional sentiment. That's transcendental, right? It's totally transcendental. But to attain that, it's like, man, good luck. to be fully, in that consciousness, because you're not active really in anything. You're just like taken up, you're just kind of swept up. So there's that, and then there's Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. First one being Dasya, servant, right? Das, right? Our names that were given, in the spiritual lineage is Das, which means servant. So that leap from passive awe and reverence to servanthood, what to speak of these higher, but just that one leap, it's bringing you to the platform of activity. So there's actually spiritual activity, and that is only had by what? By association. You can only be engaged in service, in active service, if you are connected with the parampara, right? With the line of servants, right? Because in order to serve, you need a master. And in order to be a master, you need to be a servant of another master. Right? Ultimately, God himself. Kṛṣṇa is the original spiritual master. And he then initiates Brahma. And from Lord Brahma comes the disciplic line, right? Our disciplic line is directly connected with Brahma. Then there's also Kṛṣṇa connecting Lakshmi, Rudra, 4 Kumaras like that. Those are the 4 sampradayas, those are the 4 lineages. The point is service. And I was reminded as you were speaking of, maybe you remember his name, Kirtan. We passed by not billboards, but like maybe like a sort of like posters of him, either in West Bengal, probably West Bengal. It's like Kathmanji or something like that. He's a Gaudiya Vaishnava, but he doesn't claim any guru. He doesn't.
Right.
He doesn't. Or how does he say? He doesn't believe, like, he doesn't have a guru, but he's a follower of Lord Chaitanya. But he's disregarding Lord Chaitanya's injunction of accept a spiritual master, right? So he's saying you don't need a lineage, just connects with Kṛṣṇa and Chaitanya on your own. And he has professed his own Swarup, his spiritual form, to be a vine in Vrindavan, which is meaning, okay, that's a little kind of far out, but
Pretty humble.
what's that?
Yeah, I guess that's maybe it makes it a little more believable. I'm just divine, but
because he's in the Shantaras. He's got this like, wow, Kṛṣṇa, amazing. Isn't he amazing? Just worship Kṛṣṇa. It's just like, okay, yeah, but that's not going to do it. That's not bona fide. That's not a bona fide. You can't just give people that. You can't just give people this ambiguous worship. Why? Like, why is it? Why are you Hare Krishnas so bent up about your disciplic line? It's because the only way to give someone something substantial, something bona fide, is if you have this line of service. Like, I have service, therefore I'm able to give you service. I'm able to connect to you. If I'm not giving you service, I have no way of connecting you with God. Zero way. And I'll just say one more thing is, because the emphasis there is on, again, your personal connection with God in the heart. And there's nothing I can do to awaken that. There is literally no way for me to awaken that in you, unless I'm some Paramahamsa, and just by like being in my presence, you get enlightenment. But even that's not substantial. Like, what can you actively do in your life to sustain that? You need service. You need to engage yourself. So to say, no, let's just spread God consciousness by being the light, Haribol, worship God, and let God directly interface with you without a disciple. You don't need a guru. That's bullcrap. No, what a guru does, it's not just some artificial authority structure. He's directly giving you service, and he's empowered to do that because he has been given service. Make sense?
Absolutely. That was one of the major buy-ins for me, was having that parampara, was having that lineage, that like once I found that out, and I found that out like pretty quickly actually, because I was like, what is this, Krishna? What is this? I gotta figure this out because you know, these people must be doing something for some reason. And that was really actually the Vaishnava lineage is one of the first things that I had ever even learned about. It and that lineage concept, I mean, steeped in the Christian church. The apostolic succession is what they call it. It's the same thing. It's a little different, but really it's the same thing. And that is just a sign. That gives you that bona fide, like name on the check kind of a deal. Is that lineage. So I think that the lineage, the Vaishnav lineage, is a lot more clear and a lot more present and a lot more easy. It's just it's seamless. Really, it's like right there. Like they know exactly who everybody is, and everybody, like each person are, I guess you would call them acharya. Like they knew everybody as well. Like it is a clear line, and it's a strong. I mean, it's just a strong presentation of what, of what I guess the authority would be. Is what really caught my eye about the whole thing.
Were you gonna say something, Krsna?
Yeah, that internal potency is what it's down to.
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
there's so many disciplic lines in a sense in the material world. There's disciplic lines for everything. There's the disciplic line of doctors, there's disciplic lines of lawyers, there's disciplic lines of musicians and martial artists. But that doesn't, I mean, and we can acknowledge that as an analogy that's, everything kind of comes in that way. But what makes the Vaishnava Gaudiya disciplic line special, and what makes it, what gives it life, is that it's communicating Krishna's internal desires. It's communicating information that's coming from, because we don't actually need, so to speak, that for pious life. You can have, you follow the scriptures, you live a good life, you worship God, you get initiated, like, mundane, ecclesiastical initiation from your family guru or whatever, especially in the Hindu world. There is that religious life that is essentially Shantaras, orders, and worshiping God because that's the thing I should do. I'm acknowledging that he's greater than me, and I'm doing my thing. Karma kanda, karma yoga, no bhakti. Actually, that's what separates the bhakti from the karma, really, is that what separates the bhakti from the karma is the bhakta, the guru. Because I could be a householder and have a job, and I'm doing my job, and I'm giving the results to God. Yeah, it's great. I'm a karma yogi. The instant that I have a real bona fide spiritual master who is tuned in to the service, to the desire of Lord Chaitanya to spread Krishna consciousness to every town and village, and he is bona fide and authorized to do that, the instant that someone like that says, I think you should do your job and you should give a little bit to the temple, raise nice kids. Now that you have an order from a guru, now that very same act immediately becomes bhakti. It becomes the process of dasyam. What was the process of just me doing something as karma yoga just became the process of dasyam, because now it's an offering of love to Guru and Krishna. So who are these gurus? These gurus are people that are, some of them, are actually people from the spiritual world that, are associates of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. But the idea is that they're in the internal potency. And that's what initiation really is you're being taken into Krishna's personal family. I mean, can you understand that? Is that being clearly communicated by me? Is that that
Sure.
we have this service. Is one thing to do service, like, God wants good deeds. It's be good, be a good person, go out, build hospitals, do this, do that, offer whatever you do to God. The Vedanti taught, what's the verse? Yat juhosi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat samarpanam. If you read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on Bhagavad-gita, that verse is directly referencing karma yoga. Of course, Prabhupada writes it in the context of bhakti yoga, but Vishwanath kind of explains that is, he's having this dialogue, and verse before that is Patram Pushpam Phalam Tvayam. He's describing the kind of quintessential verse of bhakti. Whatever you offer me with love and devotion, a fruit, flower, leaf, or water, even something little like that, I'll accept it. But it's kind of the idea is that but whatever you do for me, that's fine too. That's karma yoga. So when you actually do something perfect for Kṛṣṇa, like when you do something that he really wants personally done, not just you're doing what you want for him, now you're serving Kṛṣṇa desire paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya to do skritam dharma svanushtita pumsam vishvakshen, dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Kṛṣṇa appears to do that. Lord Chaitanya appears to deliver the pious and destroy the demons through the power of the holy name. Now that's his external mission. That's his personal desire. Now you have been authorized. You have been recruited and commissioned by someone who has been recruited and commissioned to be part of that mission. And you see it. I mean, you distribute a book, you give someone, you do a podcast, you're spreading the mission of Lord Chaitanya. You're fulfilling his personal desire. This is not a mundane thing. This is a personal activity to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not just like he wants you not to kill people. That's what. No, right. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Don't kill, don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie. Yeah, obviously. Things.
Yeah.
But like, you want to do some service, you want to actually do something for me, go out and spread this movement, find someone who can commission you to do it, to give you some service. Once you get that service, and the more you engage in it, namashyantashtimam bhakta, the more you have that great determination to serve, you're absorbing yourself more and more and more into this internal potency. And that's the world of miracles. That's the world of magic. That's where Kṛṣṇa is pulling all the wonderful things out of the hat. That's where you're hearing Indrajumna Swami stories and all the wonderful stories of the devotees, how they do these amazing things, because now you're in the internal potency. You're determined to serve Kṛṣṇa. You're commissioned. So anybody can go out and sell books for Kṛṣṇa. Now it's bhakti. You raise a family for Kṛṣṇa. Now it's bhakti. When it's under the instruction of a bhakta, because bhakti always has to come from a bhakta. There's no way around it.
And the reason that we are so, excited to bring forth this message and to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya is because at some point in our lives, we realize that the material world is like just not real, and you're never going to solve any of your problems or anyone else's problems with politics or drugs or cooking ham sandwiches. Okay, none of those things work, but Kṛṣṇa works, and that is why we are so excited about this message. You guys, I want to keep going, but we are right at time. I want to thank our viewers and thank you especially Rebecca, Balaram, and Kirtan for having this show and having this special time. We are going to have a show tomorrow as well, the Sunday afternoon show. I would be absolutely honored if you could come on again with us, Kirtan. Is that something you can do maybe?
Maybe I'm gonna be probably preaching late tonight, so sometimes on Sunday I have a lot to do in the morning, but I was happy I was able to come on today. And I do, I do think about it. I always try to get on, but
Yeah.
I'm always have so much other services, but it's always a pleasure.
It is an absolute honor to have you on the show, Kirtan. It really is. I'm always so honored to see you. You were one of our first guests. I think you might have been the very first person other than us to come on, actually. I remember those first couple of shows, which you should check out there, people out in YouTube land. Please.
If you liked this episode,
Yeah, yeah. Ring bells, push buttons, watch us. Put us on while you're driving around, just something to listen to while you're driving around, like delivering milk or whatever you do. Thank you so much. Let's let's chant the Maha Mantra 3 times and then we will bid adieu. All right, here we go. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
All right. We will see everybody later. Thank you so much, audience, for watching us, and Hare Krishna.
Oh.